Welcome. We observe together the third Sunday of Lent. The scripture passages are very strong, very directive. The first passage from the book of Exodus is what we call the Ten Commandments, or in Hebrew is simply the 10 words that God spoke to Moses. The gospel is a very powerful image of an angry Jesus, very hard for us to imagine, usually depicted humble, quiet, reserved, a teacher, and St. John's Gospel adds a little note to the cleansing of the temple that the other gospel writers do not have at all. He made a whip of cords and drove them out of the temple area with the sheep and the oxen, and spilled the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. Quite a dramatic scene Jesus takes to the temple. But let's start with that first reading from the book of Exodus and those 10 Commandments, which in a long-standing tradition among Christians has been always the bedrock of how we are to respond to our neighbor. Yes, Jesus said there are two great commandments: love God with your whole heart and love your neighbor as yourself. But the question immediately comes to mind, says, how do we love our neighbor as ourselves? And we know that in the revelation given to us in the 10 Commandments, we find depicted quite clearly what are some of the duties we have to our neighbor that are given in, you might say, those words of the 10 Commandments. But they also clarify how we love God above all things, which Jesus has commanded us to do. Because those commandments are very unusual, because in terms of the world in which they came to be, many times there were lists of duties, of human activities that were important and those that were not to be done in different philosophies and different civilizations. But in the 10 Commandments, we receive not only the duties of human beings to human beings, but the duties to God. The first set of commandments, those first 3 commandments, are quite clear that we are to worship none other than the living God. Any other form that would distract us from that devotion to God is something we must be careful about. As Christians also, we have created images, yes, of Jesus, who is a God-man, of the saints, of the angels, and we use them in our churches, but we try to make clear to people that they are not the object of our devotion. They represent something. They remind us of something, so that we might be more aware of the magnificence of God. That magnificence of God is very important. We also know that we must never use the name of God to prove something, because it's very, very dangerous. God's name is too holy for us to swear by. The use in courts of law have had a history, interesting history. Some Christian groups will not swear on a Bible. They feel that that's too beyond, that it's impossible as human beings to do that. Very interesting reality. But it reminds us of how seriously Christians have always taken those first 3 commandments. The other sets of commandments on the duties to our neighbor are quite clear and are quite understood. The very basic paternal respect one must have for parents. They give us life. That's not, you might say, that's not a difficult understanding of why we have to honor them. And then the commandment, honor your father and mother, is not simply, we're not talking about children, we're talking about the children, grown children. how they should respect their parents. You shall not kill. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not in any way hurt your neighbor's relationship with his or her husband and wife. You shall not steal. You shall not bear witness. You shall not lie. You shall not covet your neighbor's goods and not covet your neighbor's wife. All of these are sure means by which we would live in a happy society if all observed those 10 words and 10 commandments. So we struggle as God's people to do that each day. Have a blessed and continued Holy Lent.